If you know that, hey, this book or this product or this program, it is significantly impacting people's lives in a meaningful way. Now it's my responsibility to get that message and get that product, service, or book out to the masses for as long as it takes. And so it's my life's work.
Hi, I'm Michael Hyatt.
And I'm Megan Hyatt Miller.
And you're listening to The Double Win Show.
We are so excited to share our recent conversation with you with Hal Elrod. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun because Hal's been a friend for a while. We were in a marriage couples group together. And I don't know, we met a couple of years ago, but I knew he had an amazing story. But he survived a near fatal car accident at age 20, later overcame a rare aggressive form of cancer. In fact, he talks about it in the interview. You guys are going to be stunned. But he's the author of a book called The Miracle Morning, which has sold over 3 million copies globally and is a bestseller in multiple countries. He's a keynote speaker who's delivered presentations to audiences in over 30 countries. Overall, amazing person. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this interview. So without further ado, here's Hal. Hal, welcome to the show.
Michael and Megan, as I said before we started recording, I'm witnessing my dream right now. Father and daughter working together. Like I hope that one day my daughter Sophia and I are working together like y'all do.
Well, I hope you can do it because it's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. We were trading stories about, the first business memory I have with you when I was 7, and you were saying your daughter introduced you on stage starting at 7 years old, which I would have been terrified to do, but that's so cool.
That's such good training.
Yeah.
Well, hey, tell us just a little bit about your journey, kind of how you got from where you were to where you are now.
For me, I like to start when I was 8 years old. My baby sister, Amory, actually died in front of me. And that's a memory that it was always there, but I never really understood the significance of that event in my life. And she had passed. It was a Saturday morning. She was born with a very rare heart condition, so she lived her life in and out of the hospital, her short 18 months. And one morning she had passed away. And what really was significant is that within 6 months after my mother was devastated, my father was devastated, they began leading a support group for other parents who had lost children. And that planted the seed for me that, hey, when you go through something difficult in your life, you find a way to help other people with it and therefore find purpose in it. And you fast forward 12 years after my sister passed away, I was driving home from a Cutco conference that I'd given a speech at, and my car was hit head on by a drunk driver at 70 miles per hour, and a second vehicle crashed into my driver's side door at 70 miles per hour. And I was found dead at the scene. My heart stopped for 6 minutes. I broke 11 bones. I was in a coma for 6 days. And when I came out of the coma, the doctor said I would never walk again and that I had permanent brain damage. And within a matter of days, I was like, okay, number one, I'm going to walk again. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to visualize it. I'm going to affirm, I'm going to maintain unwavering faith that I can walk again. And if I don't walk again, I'll be the happiest person you've ever seen in a wheelchair because, if that's my life, that's my life. I thought, but I kept asking, how can I use this experience to help other people? And I'd always wanted to be a professional speaker at that point. And I go, maybe that's why I went through this. I was all excited. And the doctors thought I was delusional because I was so excited. I go, no, I think this happened for a reason. I think I'm supposed to learn and grow and become a better version of myself. And then I'm going to help other people. And I'm going to start speaking about this. And, that ended up being exactly what happened. I took my first step 3 weeks later. And then I'll wrap up this, story with, fast forward another, 7 years after that, and I went through a really difficult financial crash in 2008 when the economy crashed. I lost my home. I moved back in with my dad. I was 30, had owned a home and then lost it. And this series of really traumatic events led me to create this morning ritual that changed my life so fast. I started calling it my miracle morning. And just my own little morning routine. I was never planned on writing a book about it. And when I taught it to my coaching clients, most of them went from, I'm not a morning person, Hal, but I'll give it a try, to, oh my gosh, Hal, it works. I'm doing this miracle morning every day. I'm having the best week in my career. I'm reading, I'm meditating, I'm exercising, I'm journaling. And the light bulb went off and I went, wait a minute, if this miracle morning thing changed my life and I wasn't a morning person and, like 80% of my clients were not morning people, this could work for anybody. And that's when I had this sense of responsibility that stems back to my mom and dad, right? Like I have a responsibility to share this with as many people as I can. How am I going to do that? Well, I could give speeches on it, but that's really limited. 100 people here, 500 people there. I think I need to write a book. And so 3 years later, The Miracle Morning was self-published. And, you fast forward 12 years after that, it's 3.5 million copies sold, and it's translated in 42 languages. And never in a million years would I have dreamt that was going to be the reality.
I mean, that's
Wow.
unbelievable for a self-published book, for any book, to sell that many copies. I just want to ask one question though. Didn't you also have a battle with cancer?
5 years after The Miracle Morning published, I was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. And it was kind of like I was on top of the world. The book it was number one in Brazil, number one in Korea. It's a top book in US. It's like life was amazing. I was a workaholic though. I didn't realize that my family, who I would have told you was number one priority in my life, if you would have then said, well, can I see your schedule just to verify that they're your number one priority? You would have gone,
Mm.
oh wait, you're working a lot of weekends and you're showing up late to dinner. And so that was a big wake up call with the cancer. But when I was diagnosed, I was given a 20% chance of surviving. It was not a normal, slow
Wow.
growing tumor.
Golly.
My heart was failing, my kidneys were failing, and my lungs were failing. It's a cancer it's called acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It is a blood cancer that attacks your organs and shuts them down. And when I was finally diagnosed, after being in and out of the hospital, not knowing what was wrong, I was given 1 to 3 weeks to live. They said, you have 1 to 3 weeks to live if you don't start chemotherapy immediately. And I don't fully trust 100%, chemotherapy or the Western medical system. In full disclosure, I think there's a lot of profit margins and things involved. And so I went, let me do my own research and I'll come back to you. And I called some of the best holistic oncologists in the country, and they both verified. They said, Hal, your organs are shutting down. You literally have 1 to 3 weeks to live. There's nothing we can do naturally or holistically. There's no time for that. They said, chemo is the only solution for you right now. And then let's look at holistic to build your body back and detoxify from the chemo and so on and so forth. But yeah, so that was the scariest thing in my life, was being a dad of a 7-year-old daughter at the time and a 4-year-old son, and being told that there was an 80% chance I was going to die. So
I'm literally sitting here with my mouth open. I'm like, where's the candid camera that like, this cannot be real? I mean, my gosh, you've been through a lot. Like, wow.
How was your attitude during the cancer? Because when I was hearing you talk about the car crash and your attitude there, I'm thinking to myself, first of all, that's remarkable. But what about when the cancer happened? Were you that resilient emotionally, or would that take more of a toll?
in some ways it was easier, because I had the car accident as a reference point. I was like, oh, the odds of me walking again were slim to none, and I had such an unwavering faith in God and in myself and my ability that I defied the logic of doctors, and I took my first step. And so I told my wife was crying and so distraught and scared that she was going to lose her husband, and I said, sweetie, I'm not going to die. Like, I know they say there's only a 20% chance that people that survive this cancer, it's 20% odds. I said, there's a 100% chance that I'll be in that 20%, because I'm going to do everything they did and more to be a survivor of this. I defied the odds before. I believe in the mind-body connection. I believe in the power of, prayer and all of that. And I said, I'm going to do it again. So I really had unwavering faith that I would do it. But I want to give a quick, a very repeatable, something that someone listening that might go, oh, that's crazy. How did he have that mindset? Or I couldn't have that positive attitude. It's a very specific strategy that I learned a year and a half before my car accident that enabled me to have that mindset. So I had started selling Cutco cutlery a year and a half earlier. And in my Cutco training, I learned something called the 5-minute rule. And the 5-minute rule simply states that, hey, when things go wrong in life, and this was in the context of people are going to not buy from you, they're going to reject you, they're going to cancel their appointment, they're going to buy from you and then cancel the order, and you're going to miss your goal. They basically said that in sales, you're going to experience more adversity than a normal person does. Tons of rejection and failure. They said you need a strategy to quickly move through that adversity. And so my mentor at the time, my manager at Cutco, Jesse, said, this thing called the 5-minute rule, when something goes wrong and you find yourself feeling upset, scared, angry, whatever this, painful, destructive emotion is, he said, you set your timer for 5 minutes and give yourself 5 minutes to fully feel and express the emotions that you're feeling. right? Don't suppress them. Don't say, no, I don't have time for this. I got to go to work. You say, sucks. This is the worst thing. Why? He said, allow yourself to just fully feel it for 5 minutes. And then the timer goes off. And he said, you say 3 very powerful words. Take a deep breath. And you say, can't change it. And he taught us a simple acknowledgement that you cannot change what happened 5 minutes ago. So there's no value in wishing that you could. There's no value in wishing reality, which is this 5 minutes ago, whatever happened, happened. That's reality. And he said, the cause of emotional pain is resisting reality, wishing it were different, but you can't change the past. You can't change 5 minutes or 5 months or 5 decades ago. And so when I learned this, I thought what many listeners or viewers of this might be thinking, which is like, 5 minutes is not enough time to get over something, can I get 5 days, right? And that's what I thought. And then the first time I set my timer for 5 minutes, I remember it vividly. It was a woman who didn't buy from me, and I felt so discouraged. I thought for sure she was a great prospect. And I got in the car and I was like, I can't believe this. And I set my timer for 5 minutes, and the timer went off 5 minutes later. And I go, I'm still upset. Like, well, the timer doesn't change that. But here's what had happened. I was now elevating my consciousness, meaning I was becoming aware of, okay, I'm feeling these emotions. The timer goes off. I'm still feeling the emotions, which means I'm still resisting reality, wishing it were different. And after a few snoozes, I eventually got to the place where I went, okay, I can't change it. I guess I might as well be at peace with it. And within a week of doing that day after day after day, multiple times a day, I set the timer for 5 minutes, and 30 seconds went by. And I was so upset over this woman that canceled this huge order, and I missed my goal for the week. 30 seconds goes by and I go, wait a minute. What's the point in being upset for another 4.5 minutes? I can't change what happened, but I can choose to be at peace with what I can't change, grateful for what I have, and focus on the things that are in my control. And so you fast forward 1.5 years later, and I come out of the coma, and I am within the day, it was a lot to process. Within a few days, I go, okay, I was in a car accident. This is my reality. I broke 11 bones. If I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life. How can I be the happiest, most grateful person that anyone's ever met going through what I'm going through right now? And then you fast forward 17 years later and I have cancer. I have 20% chance of surviving. This is scary, but how can I be the happiest, most grateful, most at peace, most productive human being in these circumstances that's possible? And so that was the mindset that I took. And it started in Cutco sales training. It was tested in the car accident. And then it was, taken to another level during the cancer journey.
It's so interesting. I was at my parents' lake house this past weekend with a few of my sisters. And we were sitting in the lake on these things called whale tails. Have you ever seen a whale tail?
No.
Okay. It's kind of like a boogie board that's flexible, that has like a curvature in it, so you can sit in it like kind of like a saddle, and you can just like sit there and float. It's the most fun thing. If you ever go to the lake, you need to get a whale tail. Okay, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is we were talking about resilience, and we were talking about I've had some hard things happen in the last year, health wise, our house. Anyway, it's a whole long story. But they were like, "How do you not get stuck in that story of just everything's so hard, I can't move on, we just loop back and back." And I said, I think so much of suffering in our lives is when we fight what's happened. If we sort of expect, and I had a conversation with my therapist about this too, actually yesterday, how, if we just expect that life is going to be at least 50% difficult, like no matter how successful we are, no matter how wonderful everything is, like, I think Brooke Castillo came up with this idea, but like, half of it's going to just suck.
Yeah.
And that, like, that's just kind of like being a human.
Totally.
It really takes the pressure off. It's very counterintuitive. You think you would feel depressed about that, but you actually don't. It's like, oh, I'm not constantly experiencing this gap between this idealized version of life in which if only I could crack the code, everything would be perfect and I would never have any problems and I could engineer all them out of my life. If you're able to just accept, problems are always going to be there.
Yeah.
And I don't have control necessarily over the problems. I have control over how I show up in the context of the problems. And that actually is very freeing in my experience. So I certainly haven't been through the level of things that you've been through, but I think the principle is the same. And I think if this is something you struggle with, this is a helpful idea of what if you just didn't resist it? Maybe you have marriage problems, maybe you're dealing with financial stuff, maybe you've got, hard kids, maybe you got a health thing going on, whatever it is. What if you weren't trying to resist it and you just sort of were able to integrate it into your reality?
You use the words, the cause of pain is fighting life, right? I
Yeah.
call it resisting reality. These are all just semantics.
Yeah.
It's the idea that
Yeah.
reality is what it is. And either you're going to wish it were different, which is futile and causes you emotional pain and makes your life miserable. The more
Mm-hmm.
you resist reality and wish it were different, the more pain we create for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and freedom is in acceptance. Freedom is in being at
Yeah.
peace with what you can't change. And even further, one of my favorite books, Loving What Is by Byron Katie, is she would
Mm-hmm.
say, don't just accept it, love it. Love the challenges. And I think for me, I think for all of us, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity to learn, grow, and become a better version of who you are when
Yeah.
you first encounter that challenge. There's a better version of us on the other side. And if you go, oh, this is difficult, but I'm going to be better because of this. I'll be a better parent. I'll be a better human. I'll be a better contributor to society. Bring it on. Like, let's go. And to your point,
Yeah.
50-50 is a great frame of mind. Like, oh, this is the half that sucks. Okay. How can I make the best of the sucky part? And then
Yeah.
get to the other side of it.
Yeah.
What I love about this, Hal, is that you had a strategy. Because I think that
Yeah.
most people who find themselves in adversity just kind of show up with however they show up.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're more resilient, sometimes they're less resilient. But a strategy, that simple 5-minute strategy, and this is really timely for me because of something I went through yesterday. It wasn't a big deal, but I've been kind of ruminating on it for 24 hours.
Okay.
And I don't like a negative or an adverse situation that's occupying so much of my mental space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like that you can feel it, because I don't want to suppress my feelings,
Yeah.
but I want to feel it and be done with it and move on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, that's
Yeah.
yeah. So you set your 5-minute timer at some point today, Michael, and and fully
Just kick and
express.
scream for a minute.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the book, because this has been nothing less than a global phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave us a little bit of this story, but I want to just, because I come from the publishing world, that's my entire background.
Yeah.
How did you decide to self-publish it? And what was that experience like in getting this book out into the world? Because my experience with most self-published authors is they go through, very hard work. They put the book out there, it sells a few hundred copies, and then they're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was not your experience. So I want to hear about how it worked for you.
So while I was writing the book, I was sharing the Miracle Morning with, again, my coaching clients were the first example. I go, oh wow, this worked for them. It's totally worked. They're having it's changing their lives. And then I would teach it on. There weren't even podcasts really back then. It was like 2008, 2009. They were like, I don't even know, freeconferencecall.com, I think had come out. So people would do like, video, it was audio. It was audio. I was doing audio interviews. That's right. And so those were going out. And then somebody said, hey, you need to create an email capture page. I was like, okay, what do you mean? They go, well, do you have anything you could put up for a value? I go, yeah, I did this 1-hour audio interview on freeconferencecall.com with this guy. I could probably get the audio. And so I put up a miraclemorning.com. I couldn't believe Miracle Morning was like the domain was available and that nobody had taken that concept, by the way. But I put up the domain, and then I put up this audio, and people could put their name and email in. And I bought a pro. I was learning all of this on the fly, and I think I was 26-ish around this time. And so what ended up happening was people started opting in and sharing that audio. It started going viral of this audio, and then I'm getting emails saying, "Hey, the Miracle Morning, profound things." Like I went to a conference, I remember it vividly, and I'm after I give a speech at a Cutco conference, and this 19-year-old young man meets me in the hall, and he says, "Hal, I've been on depression medication for something like 6 years." He said, "I started doing your Miracle Morning a few months ago, and I'm off my medication." And I obviously can't advocate that, that's a recommendation, but he started crying. He goes this has totally changed my life. So the reason I share that part of the story, and there were so many little stories like that, of this woman emailed me and said, hey, this saved my marriage. I did the Miracle Morning and I stopped blaming my husband. I started taking ownership for how I was showing up to our marriage. Thank you for the Miracle Morning. And again, this is when it was an audio, right? An interview. But people were doing it. And so that for me, the seed was planted early on from my coaching clients that I have a responsibility to share this. Then it kept getting watered with this 19-year-old story and then this married woman story, right? And I go, okay, I know the Miracle Morning works. I have a responsibility to share it with the world. And I set a goal when I wrote the book. I said, my mission is to change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And that was basically creating a metric, 1 million, that was bigger than, at that time, that's as big as I could imagine. And I thought maybe it'll take the rest of my life to teach the Miracle Morning to 1 million people, sell 1 million copies of my book. And then I started to get excited. I forgot what book I read, but it was some book about, I think it was The Magic of Thinking Big. And I went, you know what? I'm going to go for it in 1 year. Why not? I'm going to try to sell 1 million copies in year one that the book comes out. So self-publish it. And at that time, podcasts were taking off in 2012. And I start reaching out to, I use my Cutco skills. It's a numbers game. I'm going to reach out to, 20 podcasts a week and try to get on as many shows as I can. And that year, I ended up doing 152 podcasts. I gave 36 speeches across the country, mostly at colleges. So I'm sharing the Miracle Morning everywhere I can. I'm on social media every day. I literally put forth extraordinary effort to sell 1 million copies. And at the end of the year, I was 987,000 copies short of my goal. So I sold 13,000 copies. And I couldn't have worked harder. I could not have done more. And so I called out my calculator. I go, okay, it's going to take me 76 years at this rate to sell 1 million copies, at which time I'll be 110 years old. And I was a little discouraged by that. But I just kind of brushed myself off and I go, I have a responsibility to just keep going, and maybe it's going to take me 30 years or whatever to do it. And year two, I did everything in my power to sell 1 million copies again. I sold 23,000 copies. So it started picking up a little steam. Now we're averaging, 2,000 copies a month in sales. And I just kept going. And then I had a few breaks along the way. I met Mike Koenigs, who introduced me to his book agent, who got us a foreign book deal and that's how it went viral in all these, in over 70 countries and 42 languages. And so here's the lesson in this. Most authors, and Michael, you kind of said this, I've given a keynote speech called Beyond the Bestseller, How to Write a Book That Creates a Movement, Earns You a Fortune, and Changes the World. And I've given that speech at like Genius Network and different events. And it's really reverse engineering. Why is the Miracle Morning such a word of mouth phenomenon? What specifically can you model that has made it so successful? And I show this graph of my sales. And it's like this for like a year and a half. During my launch, I sold 700 copies, I think the first month. And then it goes down to 300, and I'm working hard and I'm not making any money and it's like a full-time job. And it took a year and a half until the tipping point, it finally started to go up. And I show that graph and I've had so many authors that have written multiple books go, Hal, that graph that you just showed me, that slide was the most life-changing slide I've ever seen. He said, because I promoted my book for 1 month or 3 months, and then I shifted gears to the next book or the next project. Yep. He said, I can't even imagine where my book would be and the impact it would be making if I had been promoting it for, and not just a year and a half. What is it? It's been 12 years since the Miracle Morning came out. I still do probably at least 5 interviews a week talking about the Miracle Morning. And then in December, this is the new updated and expanded edition that came out. I rewrote the entire book, added 70 pages of new content. My world revolves around getting the Miracle Morning. It's gotten out to 3 million copies sold. The other 8 billion people that have not yet heard about it, that's my mission in life. And so the answer, Michael, is to continue promote if it works, right? Now, if your book's not well done and people are not really giving you feedback that it's helping them, you might want to shift gears or make some adjustments. But if you know that, hey, this book or this product or this program, it is significantly impacting people's lives in a meaningful way. Now it's my responsibility to get that message and get that product, service, or book out to the masses for as long as it takes. And so it's my life's work.
I feel like I want to just like get my pom poms and cheer right now. Like I'm like Team Miracle Morning. Let's do it. Oh wait, this isn't my business. I mean, when I'm listening to you talk, I just a couple thoughts pop into my head. One, I feel like the reason that slide is so encouraging is because, when you hear best-selling authors talk on social media or all the places, where people like us are, we don't usually tell that part of the story. Usually it's just like, and I've sold 1 million copies, and we tell the end of the story as though it's the whole story. And I think just to say, you know what, don't despise the days of small beginnings, and I also took away from your story that when you're passionate about your mission in life, it gives you a kind of frustration tolerance to tolerate 700 books for your launch instead of 700,000 or 70,000 or whatever was in your mind as the ideal. It's like, you know what? It doesn't really matter because I am in it for the long game and I'm just going to keep at it because it's not just about the short-term gain of hitting a list or making a certain amount of money. This is really about why I'm on this planet to begin with. And that's the whole point of being here. So I'm just going to keep at it.
Man. Yeah, I think this is so extraordinary because I've certainly been guilty of writing the book and then promoting it for, maybe 30 to 60 days. Yeah. And I'm on to the next thing. And I love creating new things, but promotion's such hard work. And man, I really admire you. And I think that the lesson for those of you listening is don't give up.
Yeah.
Stay with it. Because I think that most people who experience failure probably just didn't stay with it long enough. They didn't have the frustration tolerance.
Right.
And so they just gave up and said, this isn't working. And it takes a while to break through, for sure.
Well, I love one of my favorite, cliche quotes is it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. Right. I really believe that. For me, it took 6 years to sell 1 million copies, right? So 6 years, it finally sold 1 million copies. And I could not have predicted the way that would happen because over half of those were sold in other countries to people that I don't speak their language, right? Like that was not, when I wrote The Miracle Morning, never in a million years did I think, oh, this will be translated in other languages, right? And it was one dinner that led to this meeting of this agent that led to, on and on and on. So you can't predict it. And, my follow-up book, it's up here on the wall somewhere, The Miracle Equation is unwavering faith plus extraordinary effort until you achieve the result that you're committed to. Like that's the secret to creating tangible, measurable miracles in your life. And so that was, I applied that to this Miracle Morning, which is like, I'm going to put forth extraordinary effort and maintain unwavering faith to get me through the challenges because I know what's possible. I know this is helping people. And I'm just going to do it for as long, as it possibly takes.
Let's unpack the Savers framework because this is the essence of the book.
Right, because people are like, okay, I'm one of the 8 billion people that hasn't read the book yet. What is the Miracle Morning? Tell me. Yeah,
so the Miracle Morning, in short, it is 6 of the most timeless, proven personal development practices done in the morning. And it can be done in as little as 6 minutes. And that's not hyperbole like 6-minute abs. It's literally, there's an entire chapter in the new edition of the book called,
right?
The 6-minute Miracle Morning, which is where you do one focused minute for each of these 6 practices. And you can't obviously go nearly as deep as if you're doing 30 minutes or 60 minutes, right? But the average person, roughly 72% of Miracle Morning practitioners that we survey around the world do a 1-hour Miracle Morning. 20% do a 30-minute Miracle Morning. And then the other, what is that? Roughly 10% do somewhere either shorter or longer. The Miracle Morning, these 6 practices, thanks to my beautiful wife, Ursula, AKA my muse. One day I was writing the book and I walked out of my office down we worked at home and I in the hallway, I see my wife and she goes, "You look frustrated. What's wrong?" I said, "I've got these 6 practices. None of them are new. I didn't invent any of these. They're thousands of years old. And so they're not original." I said, and all these other authors have some sort of way that they connect or structure or frame their, they got a framework and it's memorable and it's right. And I said, Robert Kiyosaki's got the cash flow quadrant. Stephen Covey's got the 7 habits of highly effective people. I don't know what to do with this to make it memorable and easy to implement. She goes, why don't you get a thesaurus and see if you can swap some of the words of the practices and then assemble an acronym that people could remember? And I was like, light bulb, kissed her and thank you, baby. That might be it. And so meditation became silence. That's the first S in Savers. And I love that because prayer, breath work, meditation, right? Like you're starting your day with silence, peaceful, purposeful silence to get centered, to gain clarity, to calm your nervous system. So meditation became silence. And then the final S in Savers is scribing, which was originally journaling. So journaling became scribing, which is a fancy word for writing. And then AVERS or AVER, those stayed the same. The A is for affirmations. The V is for visualization. The E is for exercise. And the final R is for reading. And the way this all came to be is in 2008, I had lost, again, over half of my clients, half of my income, house being foreclosed on, canceled the gym membership. I was literally at the lowest point in my life. I would say I was more depressed during that time than like car accident, cancer, because during those times I had so much love and support being poured into me. Well, in 2008, everybody was drowning, right? So I'm just one of many, and I feel like I'm on my own. And it was an epiphany, a Jim Rohn quote. Jim Rohn said, "Your level of success in every area of your life will seldom exceed your level of personal development." And I might have heard that quote before, but I played it again and I went, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, and if you're listening right now, by the way, ask yourself this same question that I asked myself, okay? If our level of success is rarely going to exceed our level of personal development, there's 2 questions that need to follow that statement. Number 1, what level of success on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most happy, healthy, successful, in love, right, peaceful you could be, financially secure. On a scale of 1 to 10, what level do we all want? And the answer, I believe, is 10. I've never met anyone that's like, well, I don't want to be too happy or too financially secure. Or, no. Human nature is we have this drive and desire to self-actualize and live life at a level 10. But if our level of success won't exceed the level of personal development, my next question for myself was, okay, I want level 10 success. What's my level of personal development? And let me define that for everybody because it's kind of a vague topic. To me, it's the habits that you have in place every day, the rituals, routines, or habits that enable you to develop yourself at a higher level. You gain more knowledge, you gain more self-belief, right? You're developing your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual capacities and abilities to a higher level day by day by day. And as we get better, our ability to make our life better increases. And so my answer to the question, what's my level of personal development? It was like a 2, like maybe a 3 or a 4 on a good day. But I was in scarcity mode. I was in fear mode. I was just trying to figure out how to make money, and everything else had gone out the window because I needed to pay the bills. And so I went home with this epiphany, and I was on a run when I heard the quote from Jim Rohn. I went home and I went, okay, I Googled, what do the world's most successful people do for personal development? And I was looking for one practice, like, okay, what's the one thing I need to do? And I came across meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, journaling, and I'm writing them all down on this piece of paper. And I get overwhelmed. I go, it's like, what is it? Paralysis by analysis. I'm going, well, I don't know which one I should do. And then the light bulb moment, the voice of God, whatever you want to call it, it was, what if I did all 6? What if I woke up tomorrow 30 minutes earlier and I did 5 minutes of meditation, or now silence, right? 5 minutes of affirmations, 5 minutes of visualization, like the world's greatest athletes do every day to perform at their best. Why wouldn't I? 5 minutes of exercise, just get the blood flowing, get the heart rate up, get the oxygen to the brain. 5 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of journaling, what I'm grateful for. And I woke up the next morning like a kid on Christmas. I'd been depressed for 6 months in this downward spiral. I woke up the next morning like a kid on Christmas, and I went in the living room, and the night before I had opened 6 tabs: how to meditate, how to do affirmations, how to visualize. So I took a minute to read, okay, that's how I do meditation. Okay, close my eyes. I suck at this. I can't quiet my mind, right? But 30 minutes later, I felt incredible. I went from being depressed and scared and hopeless for 6 months to my very first miracle morning. And this is a very common, people share this a lot. It's their very first miracle morning. Everything opens up for them. And they realize if I start every day like this, it's only a matter of time before I develop myself into the person that I need to be to save my marriage, to be happy, to save the business, generate more income. It's universal. Whatever you point your miracle morning to, those are the results that you get.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. That's so exciting. I'm thinking about my kids who are athletes, and I'm thinking specifically of my older son. Like, is there a miracle mornings for teens? I'm sure there is. I'm looking at all your little.
There is not yet. That is
Okay, this is your next book, Hal.
Trust me. I think that's the most important book that I will ever write, and it's why I've been waiting. I should be more proactive about it. But the Miracle Morning for Seniors is the next book coming out. So, it's called The Miracle Morning After 50. We realized through surveying that very few people actually identify as seniors. So,
I know.
That's so true.
I'm like, I'm getting close to 50. I don't feel like I'm a senior. Yeah.
So now it's called The Miracle Morning After 50. That's the next book in the series. But The Miracle Morning for Teens is, I think, the most important book possibly that I'll ever write because it's so needed. And I will say this. We have a Miracle Morning Schools program. The Miracle Morning is rolled out in hundreds of schools, mostly in New York City, because that's where we started it a couple years ago to prove the model. And it's transforming the lives of top down. Principals are using it. They're teaching it to their teachers and staff, and they're using it. Then they're rolling it out in their classrooms, and it's from elementary through high school, everything in between. So it is being utilized with teenagers, but that book's just not written yet.
Okay.
I have one question about, we're not going to go through the whole Savers model because you guys need to buy the book.
Yeah.
And we'll have links to the show notes, but I'm sure you can find it anywhere. In fact, I know it's on Amazon.
Just go to Amazon right now.
So I want to talk about affirmations. I think that a lot of affirmations that I've heard people give are kind of woo-woo and not believable. And so I've got my own set of affirmations, and I use an app called Think Up. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've heard of it,
But you record the affirmations in your own voice.
Yes.
And then it plays it back to you over a bed of music that you choose. And it's really powerful. But I'd love to get your take on affirmations.
So affirmations, I believe they're the most misunderstood form of personal development, and they are the most effective. If I had to pick one of the savers, politically correct answer would be they're all equally important. But honestly, affirmation, if I could only do one saver, it would be affirmations. And the reason I believe they're misunderstood is the way that we've been taught affirmations for, decades, one of two faulty ways. Number one, affirm something that you aspire to be true that is not yet true as if it were true, right? So if you're struggling financially, just affirm, I am wealthy. Right? But the problem is, if that isn't true for you, you are now creating an unnecessary internal conflict as if we don't have enough of those, right? And your subconscious, you're going, I am wealthy. Your subconscious is going, no, you're not. You're broke. Look at your bank balance, right? And you're fighting yourself. The other problem with affirmations is we're taught to use this flowery passive language that promises a magical result independent of any effort. And I'll use an example that we can all relate to. I am a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly and in abundance, right? And the reason I think that affirmation has stood the test of time, and it's also counterproductive, but it stood the test of time because it's like taking an antidepressant or a shot of whiskey or some sort of quick Band-Aid where you look at your bank balance on your phone and you go, oh my gosh, I'm overdrawn. I got to do my affirmations. You go, I'm a money magnet. And you go, okay, that feels better, right? Delusionally imagining you're this money magnet. And then money flows to my life effortlessly. Oh, thank God, because I don't have any motivation right now. And in abundance. And it's so you do the affirmations and it makes you feel better for a little bit while you do them. But it actually takes you away from realizing, no, you got to do things to actually increase income. So the way that I teach affirmations in the Miracle Morning, and I'll give this away. Now in the book, I'm going to walk you through how to do this in your, for each area of your life. But here's the formula. The Miracle Morning Affirmations formula, there's 3 steps. Step 1, affirm what you're committed to. Don't say I'm wealthy if you're not. Say I'm committed to becoming wealthy, or I'm committed to increasing my income by 30%, or I'm committed to starting a side hustle, growing, whatever you're committed to, that's what you're going to move toward in your life. Step 2, affirm why it is a must for you. Where this is where you fuel that commitment. It's like, you're committed to what? Okay, but why? Who are you doing it for? Is it just for you? Is it for your spouse, your children, humanity? Why is this a must for you? What's the outcome you're working towards, or the benefits of that outcome? Step 3, which actions will you take and when will you take them? So that formula is totally rooted in reality. It's affirming the most important thing, which is what you're committed to, why it's a must for you, and which actions you're going to take and when. And when I had cancer, that affirmation saved my life. When I was afraid that I was going to die, when I was on chemo and I was sick, I would affirm, I'm committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there's no other option. And then I had 5 bullet points as to why I'm committed. I'm committed for Ursula because I promised her forever and a day. I'm committed for my mom and dad because they do not deserve to lose another child. I'm committed for Sophia and Halston because they need their daddy's love, guidance, and leadership, and on down the line. And then I have specific actions, what I was going to do each week in terms of my miracle morning, focusing it on beating cancer, reading books on beating cancer, taking 70 supplements a day, doing ozone sauna, doing coffee enemas, on and on and on, lymphatic massage. It was totally, this affirmation, it's a blueprint for exactly what you need to think, focus on, believe, and do in order to achieve anything and everything that you want in your life.
Dude, I'd like to hug you right now because this is like the most sane explanation of affirmations I've ever heard. Because there's been something about it that I recoiled against. And I kind of did the commitment thing too in the affirmations I do. I said, what can I affirm that's true? Like, for example, on the financial stuff, I'd say, I'm not wealthy, but I'm learning, the tools of wealth, something like that. But this is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I love it so much. I feel like we could camp at any one of these spots for the entire conversation that we're having. But selfishly, I'm really curious about something that you talk about, this idea of miracle evenings as being the setup for miracle mornings. So I personally believe this is totally true. It's like if you don't go to bed on time, for example, it's going to be super hard to get up on time, which is going to be super hard then to have your morning ritual. But talk about what you mean by that. What is a miracle evening and how do we get one?
Yeah, so I was late to the party on an evening ritual period. I for the last 10 or 12 years, I've been asked, Hal, what's your evening ritual? And I was always kind of embarrassed to go, I don't really have one. I just go to bed, right? And then I started looking into it, studying, reading, and I realized that, how you end your day is as important. I would say almost important. I think honestly, the morning is the key because how you start the day sets the tone for the rest of the day. But it's right behind it in terms of importance. And how you end your day does set up the morning, right? If you end your day feeling stressed out, tossing and turning, going to bed, thinking about things that are out of your control, worrying, and not getting sleep, not sleeping well, you're probably not going to have a great start to the day. It's going to be real difficult to have that miracle morning. And so the miracle morning, similar to the Savers, I decided to stick with the theme of acronyms, and I created an acronym SLUMBERS, SLUMBERS. And I won't go through each one, I just for sake of time, but I do talk about the supplements that I take before bed. In 2020, I went through a really dark time in my life, and I know we've talked about enough of them, so I won't go too deep into this. But after 3 years of chemotherapy, the toll it took on my brain, they call it, it's like your brain gets poisoned from the chemo. I did over 800 hours of chemo, and my brain was damaged to the point of I started sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night and developed extreme anxiety. I became suicidal. If you ever slept for 2 to 4 hours in one night, you're a wreck the next day. This went on for 6 months. So I became delusional, and it was terrible. And then I realized I was crying all the time. I had never really cried my whole life. I kind of would, use my 5-minute rule and all that. But I was just out of control emotionally, mentally, physically. I was exhausted. And it helped me develop a level of empathy that I had never had before that. And that was the gift. That was the gift in that experience. And I needed 6 months of begging God to make it stop, because if it hadn't been long enough and painful enough, I wouldn't have got the lesson, right? And so the point is, that's why I created this miracle evening ritual, to help people fall asleep feeling peaceful and grateful, even in the midst of the most difficult times in their lives. And that's what the miracle morning, the miracle evening is. And it's, I'll go through a few of them quickly. Stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed, because it takes
I've heard
that
that.
long to fully diet, or 2 to 4 hours, depending on how heavy the meal is, right? If you eat a big, heavy meal right before bed, then you're going to feel like you were hit by a truck in the morning, because a lot of times we wake up wondering why we're tired. It's because you ate late at night. And now your body's digesting food all night long. The L is let go of stressful thoughts and feelings. Now, easier said than done. So in the book, I walk you through how, even if you have the most stressful day and you're struggling financially, and your spouse, you just yelled at each other right before you went in the bedroom, how do you, you need a strategy, Michael, like you said. How do you let go of stressful thoughts and feelings, right? The U is use sleep supplements as needed. So going through all of those, it allowed me to solve a horrific challenge with sleep. And I feel like if it worked for me, then anybody that's got anything from sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night, being depressed, anxious, and suicidal, or just wanting an evening ritual to wind down, feeling grateful and happy, anywhere in between, the miracle evening is really a solution for that.
You know what's cool about this is you've done what I think so many people in personal development do, and that is we're able to take some misery and turn it into a mission.
Yeah.
So like nothing is wasted. And you've had to live this, and that's why it's so powerful. I mean, this is resonating so deeply with me because it's not just theoretical. It's not something you compiled a lot of academic journals and came up with the best research, and now you're offering that as advice.
Yeah.
But this is lived experience. And that's the most powerful kind of teaching I think that there is.
A lot of people in our audience, when we've spoken together and answered questions, they have asked me in particular, because I've got a bunch of kids and, running a business and all the things. How did you do this when you had a new baby, for example? Or how did you do it when you were really struggling with your children when you first brought them home? We have our 2 middle children are adopted from Uganda. Our 3 younger ones are all together. But anyway, if you're not in a season where you have the luxury of like some amazing morning ritual, I think it's easy to think, well, that's for a different season of life. Like I can't even think about that right now. I got a new baby, or my business is struggling, or I'm taking care of my parents who are elderly, or, health challenge, or whatever. Is this for everybody? And what does it look like? I mean, I feel like you are the expert on life not going according to plan. What does it look like to do this in the midst of a less than ideal circumstance when you don't have an hour? Maybe you've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Yep. The easiest answer to that, and I could not always give you this answer. My answer was a little more challenging before, but we created an app for that. And it's been the number one requested resource for 12 years, which is, hey, people would say, I use 6 apps for a miracle morning. I have a meditation app. I've got an affirmations app, a visualization app, a exercise app, a reading, I use iBooks or Kindle, and then a journaling app. And they said, I got to switch between apps. And so it was always a heavy lift for us I don't know how we're going to create the ultimate, how are we going to create an app that's as good as all of those in 6 different categories, right? So it's taken years of development, but we have that. And here's the short answer, or the short solution. You literally click play. So you click play, and Lucy Osborne, the voice of the Miracle Morning app, and we have a lot of voices, but she's the primary voice. And her voice, I've heard it described as, it feels like she's hugging me through the app when she talks to me. She's amazing. But you click play, and she guides you through an entire miracle morning in as little as 6 minutes. The app is free to download. There's a built-in journal and a tracker and this and that. But in the free version of the app, you hit play, and I think it's an 11-minute, it's either 11 or 13-minute savers, but she guides you through it. So it's like you hit play and she guides you through it. You could be literally holding the baby, rocking the baby, right? And then if, without the app, the answer I've always given is, and this comes not from me, I have never been a new mom, right? I've had a new baby, but I've never been a new mom. But in the Miracle Morning community, that's a Facebook group with 350,000 people in it. This is a question that gets asked amongst many questions, but very often, hey, I'm a new mom. How do you do this? And the answer that comes from other moms that have done it and figured it out on their own is, they go, I just do my savers whenever I can. So, when the baby's down for a nap, I'll just start at S, get through S, get through A, get through V. Oh, baby's awake, right? Okay. And the baby goes back down. All right, now I throw out E and then, oh, baby's awake. So they said it might take me, spread out over the entire morning, or even into the afternoon. But so there's a couple ways, right? The app's the easiest kind of done for you way to do it. And then, or you just do your savers as you can, starting when you wake up and then until you're done.
I love that.
And so that's available on the App Store for iOS and the Google Store
and the Google
for
Play Store.
Android.
Yeah.
For both.
Very cool.
That's so great. I think that so much of this stuff, when we're talking about personal development, we're talking about rituals, we're talking about routines, it can feel very unattainable for all kinds of reasons for people, that they just think this is for somebody else in a different season of life, no matter what season you're in. And I think the thing that I found to be effective is you got to keep adjusting and holding it with an open hand. When we adopted our youngest daughter, she had special medical needs. It was a whole thing, and I went from being able to have an hour-long morning ritual to I had like max of 15 minutes. But that's okay because you know what? You can do a great morning ritual in 15 minutes. And that's what, when you look at your whole life, if you're willing to make those adjustments and not have an idealized version, then you can consistently have this kind of a practice in your life rather than it only works if the stars align. And, I'm in that one moment where I think I'm in the perfect season of life. I'm still waiting for that one, but yeah. It's so great.
One of the things that we do at the end of the show is we've got like 3 questions we want to ask you related to the double win, which is this idea that, really, and this is part of the mission of our company, it is the mission of our company, is that we believe that everybody deserves to win at work and succeed at life. It's not an either or proposition, it's both and. And so we try to make it nearly impossible for people not to get the double win. So we've got a couple questions related to that, because I know from having been in Family Brand with you, how committed you are to your family. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So when you think about this idea of winning at work and succeeding in the whole rest of your life, what's the hardest part of that for you these days?
These days, I think it's the same as always. This was my second year attempting to take a sabbatical and just completely take the summer off to be with the family. But I get sucked into work. And I get sucked into work. One is, for example, the Miracle Morning for Seniors. I didn't know that the editor was going to have it ready for me to look at and give all my feedback on and finish right when sabbatical started. I'm like, wait, this is totally come out of left field. So I think that's the hardest part. But one of the big epiphanies I had when I had cancer was when I realized I was a workaholic, right? That was part of the epiphany. But a big part of that was what I prioritized. And I was prioritizing the impact I was making in the world over the impact that I could make for my family. It was quantity over quality. I felt very justified in, well, hey, I'm changing millions of lives, right? I've got to do this extra thing, and I got to miss this thing with my kids because I'm changing millions of lives. And when I had cancer, I just had the epiphany of, who is to say that changing millions of lives, and arguably superficially relative to the impact I can make with my family, it was the decision that those 3 people who I live with, the impact I can make in their life supersedes by far more important than the impact I can make with the world. And so I think that was a big part of it, was realizing that, and also realizing that no matter, when my kids are grown, they're not, and when I'm on my deathbed, they're not going to remember how many books I sold or how many lives I changed. They're going to remember how did I show up for them, and so it was really a shift in realizing that that's what's most important. And so now, I take my kids to school a few days a week. I pick my daughter up every day. Like, I try to book in my days with family time to make sure that at the very least, even if I don't work during the day, I'm getting quality time, to start and end the day.
That's great.
Okay. Second question.
Okay. So how do you know if you've gotten the double win? What's that thing inside of you that says, oh, I'm winning at work and succeeding at life right now?
For me, I go to bed at night easily feeling grateful and at peace. Like, I use my miracle evening, strategy if I'm stressed and I need to do it. But I prefer to just walk into my bedroom and go, oh, what an awesome day. And it's how connected I feel with my wife and kids. If I felt, if I had a really nice interaction with all 3 of them, then that to me is the most important thing in my life. It's how I measure success. But we can't control other people's reactions all the time. So I think it's very important that can't be the primary measure. We cannot, or the only measure. We can't just go, well, if they're in a good mood and they're, well, then I win. Oh, well, what if you did everything in your power, everything right, and they're still having a tough day themselves and it's not about you? And so that for me, the miracle morning to me enables me to focus on the two things that I can control: who I become every day, right? Through my personal development, what I learn, how I grow, how I regulate my nervous system through meditation and the other savers. So who I become each day, and then that leads to the second thing I can control, which is how I show up. How I show up for my family, how I show up at work, how I show up for my wife and my kids. And so the miracle morning to me is like, okay, this is ensuring that I'm fully aware of what's going on inside of me and thoughtful and intentional about showing up my best for those I love and those I lead. And so now it's not just dependent on how they treated me or how they responded. It's, can I go to bed and did I give my best today? Did I really show up at my best for my wife and for my kids? If the answer is yes, that's an easy way to go to bed, feeling grateful and at peace, and knowing that, oh, the stress that they might be feeling, or the thing that my teenage daughter said to me that kind of cut deep, that's actually not personal. That's something she's going on with her. I'm doing the best that I can, and I can be at peace with that.
I love that answer. That's great. Okay, the last question, which is going to sound funny to you given our conversation. What's one ritual or routine that helps you do what you do? So I would just say, see this whole conversation, but
maybe in addition to that.
But yeah, is there anything that you do that's not the miracle morning or the miracle evening that maybe you don't talk much about, but is a ritual that helps you do what you do?
Yeah, that's a great. For me, it's exercise, which, yes, that's part of the miracle morning. But my miracle morning exercise, it's like I'll do 5 or 10 minutes of stretching yoga. Like, it's just a quick thing. It's not working out. And then here where I'm at in my office, right behind me, I've got a weight room. And so I come in and I do PEMF, so a little bit of biohacking, right? I have a PEMF mat. It's the Hugo Intense that Tony Robbins uses. I figured if it's good enough for Tony, okay. And then I've got red light therapy. And then I work out. I lift weights. Oh, actually, above all of that, this is still related, but it's my morning bike ride. So there is my morning bike ride, and I don't do it every day. I alternate lifting and biking. But the morning bike ride, I pray the entire time. It's like a conversation with God out loud. And I'll just go, and here's a really unique thing. I used to, as soon as I left my driveway, I pedaled as hard as I could. And then going downhill, I pedaled as hard as the entire ride was as hard as I could. And then one day I had this, I don't know what it was, this epiphany. I go, wait a minute. Why don't I let God carry me on the downhills? Right? It was this metaphor of, and so now I just go, God, I go, thank you for carrying me. And then as I'm biking uphill, I go, thank you for the strength in my legs. So the entire bike ride is just, I'm thankful for every moment. Thank you for the trees. Thank you. I just say thank you. And it's about a 10-minute bike ride. So it's 10 minutes of biking and saying thank you and breathing fresh air. It's probably one of my favorite parts of my day.
I love that. That's fantastic.
And you're in a part of the country where you can do that pretty much year round.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I wouldn't say that. No, it's too hot in the summer. And in the winters, we have very little. San Diego, where I used to live, yes. But in Texas, it'll be 100, and then you get like a month of nice weather, and then it's 30.
Well, apparently my memory's bad because I lived in Texas in Waco for like 12 years. And you're exactly right. You're bringing those memories back.
It's extreme. We get like 2 months a year of San Diego-like weather, which we're actually in that right now. Right now, it's perfect out there. Yeah.
That's here
great.
Too. Well, Hal, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, this has exceeded my expectations.
Me too.
So thank you again.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me, Megan and Michael. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you.
I had a bunch of takeaways from that show.
Yeah, I had a bunch of head explosions in that show. I mean,
got a little messy.
First of all, wow, what a story. I mean, I was just telling Sarah, our producer, I was just saying, like some people in this space of personal development and achievement, productivity, whatever, it's kind of like, yeah, like my life has been amazing and I'll, descend from the clouds to tell you how you can do it too. He's like, my life has not been amazing in a lot of ways. I mean, he wouldn't say it like that, but he's overcome so many things that what he's talking about in the Miracle Morning is hard won. And that, for me anyway, makes me just have so much confidence and trust in what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's hard to respect somebody giving you advice that hasn't suffered.
Right. Well, at least the older you get.
Yeah, at least the
Anyway.
older you get. And so the fact that he has suffered in so many areas and yet is so positive
Hmm.
and has such wisdom to share
Yeah.
is very inspiring. And I
Yep.
mean, it made me think of the things that I go through and I go, just sort of a further resolve to press through them.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also is very hopeful. I think at a certain point in life, most of us have been through a lot of difficult things. Nobody gets out of life without suffering. And sometimes it can feel like those things are going to have the last word, that those are going to be the truest things about our stories, or that they're really in the way of us living out our purpose, our calling, and flourishing. And I think he's such a great example of no, they are difficult, they are painful, but they can be the very thing that is the key that unlocks your purpose and your calling. And I just love that because it feels, on the one hand, profoundly in reality, as he said, but also profoundly hopeful.
I agree. One of my biggest takeaways was his 5-minute rule.
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of swung from one extreme to the other. My earlier days when I would have a setback, I would just suppress it because I felt like, it was hindering my productivity and I didn't have time to deal with it emotionally. So I would just stuff it. Well, unfortunately, that's not a very healthy way to deal with adversity or with setbacks because they end up bubbling up in unhealthy ways. And then I think, there's been times when I've overindulged myself and stayed too long in that space. But I think the 5-minute rule, I don't know if it's 5 minutes or 10
Right. It's
minutes or a
not so much
day.
about the precise amount of
Yeah.
time.
But it's like take the time to process it emotionally. But that profound realization, and it's so obvious, but the realization that I can't change it.
Yeah.
So why am I spending all this time ruminating over it? I just need to accept the fact that that happened. That's my reality. And now I need to move forward.
Yeah. It reminds me of recovery. I'm not in recovery, but I know and love people who are. And I think that's such a big part of the recovery journey from addiction is acceptance.
Hmm.
It's like the idea of my life has become unmanageable, for example, and the serenity prayer. It's like just such a big part of that journey is accepting where you are and not pretending or even wishing necessarily that it were different. And I think that is such a powerful takeaway. And paradoxically, that kind of acceptance is the thing that makes us free to go on and achieve in spite of or even because of the adversity we face. It's like if we keep waiting and kind of trying to will our way into no suffering and no problems and all that, we're never going to get anywhere because that's just not no one's cracked that code yet.
No, that's right. Well, I think we had him on thinking we were going to talk about the whole time about the miracle morning. And certainly that was an important part of the interview. But that whole adversity part of it
Yeah.
was an added bonus and maybe the jewel in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the miracle morning because we have written and taught on rituals for a long time.
Yeah.
We have basically a whole book on it,
Mhm.
the book on habits. But what did you get out of that you didn't have before?
Well, the thing I have felt myself with my own morning ritual at various times, and the thing more importantly that I hear from people in our community is that it feels unattainable. Not our version of it particularly, but just any version of it. That it just feels like, yeah, but just about the time you figure it out, you enter a new season of life or something goes wrong or whatever. And I think the idea of resilience and the fact that his model, the Savers model that he has created, one, it makes it easy because it's kind of like you have this framework that you can just work through and you don't have to sort of be creative about what you want to put in it. He's done that work for you. But also it's so highly adaptable that whether it's 5 minutes or an hour and a half, you can scale it to wherever you are in life. And one of the things that I've really learned in my own life with a lot of adversity is that you've got to be able to lower the bar so that you can get over it. If you're never able to chin the bar because the bar is always so much higher than
Yep.
what you can reasonably chin, then it's just an invitation to quit.
Yeah, and you don't want to have your morning ritual be dependent upon your day when you're the most highly motivated.
Right. Like that's going to happen once a month if you're lucky.
Exactly
You know,
right.
most days there's going to be something that is difficult, whether it's how you feel when you get up, or maybe you've got a sick kid like I've had recently, or, you got something to finish with work that you wish you didn't have to work on, whatever it is, or, there's a car accident on the road on the way to your office, like whatever it is, there's going to be something. And the question is, are our rituals and routines pliable enough that they can work in a variety of settings? And I really felt that his could.
Yeah, I felt like it's almost like his framework is almost like an accordion.
Yeah.
So it can be
Yeah.
compressed or expanded dependent upon the season of life or what just happens to be happening a particular day.
Yeah.
And I've kind of got my own version of that. But I loved his explanation of affirmations.
I know, that was big.
I almost recoil against the whole idea. And even though I teach it, but I've heard so many wonky explanations of it that I don't want to be associated with it.
Yeah.
But that totally made sense.
Right. It didn't feel like magical.
Yeah.
There was no magic in that, in the sense that it's like you're trying to cast a spell on yourself or something. It's really just orienting your mind to the truth and what your commitments are. And I love that.
I did too. Yeah, it was excellent. Well, there's so much takeaway, and I just want to encourage you guys, buy the book,
Yes.
The Miracle Morning, and I'm going to buy the book, The Miracle Evening, because I've not read that.
Yeah.
And I'm very intrigued by his slumbers acronym,
Mhm.
and I want to delve into that.
And the app.
Yeah, and the app, totally.
I think that is so cool and such a great way to do this kind of accordion thing that you're talking about. Again, it's like anywhere in your life that you can automate the thinking about something. Like if you could just have somebody prompt you through your morning ritual, amazing.
Less friction.
Less friction.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for this episode. Do us a favor. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to wherever you listen to podcasts, rate it, and give us a review. That would be so helpful, and we would be so grateful because that feeds the algorithm that pushes the podcast higher in the rankings and gets more people exposed to this idea of the double win, which is something that's near and dear to our hearts.
Mhm.
So if it's important to you, help us out. We'll see you next week.